Hello and welcome to the big picture. The tensions between India and Pakistan, which has led to cross-border raids and attacks by India, and also the continued infiltration and attacks on army base in Kashmir, has caused a lot of concern. While the tensions continue, the question is how is it affecting the economy, both in short term and long term. The finance minister has asserted that the impact is marginal. However, the stock markets have been reacting negatively. Meanwhile, business analysts feel that the international outlook towards the tensions is cautious and a wait-and-watch approach is being adopted. What is the impact of the tensions on the economy and which areas does it affect and what are the short and the long-term impact? We will discuss this today with CM Vasudev, former Finance Secretary, Government of India, Rajiv Kumar, Senior Fellow, Center for Policy Research, Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, and A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Standard. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Rajiv Kumar, what is the, how do you look at these tensions and what kind of impact it is having on the economy?
You know, the Indian economy is very large and therefore in some sense be able to absorb any direct impact of disruption in bilateral trade from Pakistan, which in any case is rather marginal and very small in its magnitude. But the major impact that I see happening is on the investment climate in India, because the tensions are perceived as, causing instability in the south, in this region, and investors are therefore bound to take a wait-and-watch approach towards bringing in further investment into the country. But my own view is that I agree with the finance minister's assertion that the impact on the Indian economy will not be more than marginal.
Mr. Dua?
I would share
when he says it is going to be marginal, which means that he says extremely marginal actually. There will be some areas which will be affected. Rajiv talks about impact on the investments.
I think we need to keep in mind the diversity between the Indian economy and the Pakistani economy. Pakistani economy is, apart from being smaller, not so diverse as we are, they are hugely agrarian compared to us. The Pakistan and agrarian, depending upon a lot of water which flows down the Indus and that other two rivers to which they have a full right. I think impact on them probably could be more adverse than upon us if tensions were continue to build and, God forbid, if there were to be a war between the two countries. That has been the experience in the past as well as now. The government expenditure in Pakistan as well as India would certainly get impacted if there is a war. And we are right now passing through a stage with private investments being lagging behind, considerable dependence for keeping our rate of growth, our investment ratio. We are dependent upon government
public
investment. I think that is one area which we need to keep in mind.
Okay, Mr. Vasudev. Mr. Vasudev, it is said that we have seen similar tensions in the past between India and Pakistan, and you have been in government in those times when such tensions have happened in the past. But some people say that what is happening now and what had happened then, there is a difference. Do you see any difference as far as impacting the economy is concerned?
No, just a couple of things. I think I would tend to agree with what Rajiv has mentioned. I think at this point of time, it is not going to be any substantive effect on the economy. It is the sentiment which is probably going to get affected or may have already got affected to some extent, especially for foreign investors with the heightened political risk for it. They would rather wait for things to settle down before putting in more money in India, and probably the same would go for new investors within the domestic economy as well, because nobody wants to invest in a situation where the political risk is heightened, because political risk very easily translates into commercial risk. The other aspect, I feel the benefit which could have come from a government which is perceived to be strong and decisive, I think that is also a positive sentiment which goes into the economy. And that sentiment was there, but unfortunately the political type of blame game and political discussions which are taking place currently, I think the image of the government in that sense, what it should be in a situation like this, which could provide a big spur to the economic activities, because everybody wants a strong and decisive government. And if that impression was being created, and I still hope that that impression stays, but unfortunately the political wrangles that have started on that may have dented that image to some extent. So the positives that we could have gained. The third aspect I feel is that a greater economic relationship between India and Pakistan, that is an opportunity lost. I wouldn't say it is a setback to the economy, but the potential which is there for both economies, Indian economy and Pakistan economy also, to have more bilateral trade which can give boost to the economies on both sides, direct route to Afghanistan, and of course the flights curtailment which is going to take place, the Indian sort of commercial flights will have to take a longer detour or will have to fly much higher, and there are added costs on account of that. Those are some of the negative things which will happen to the Indian economy. But the potential that is getting lost, and there is a setback for many years in that sense. We had started seeing some improvement in the bilateral economic relations and better trade between India and Pakistan. That setback is an opportunity lost. But all in all, given the present level of border skirmishes that are taking place, I think the impact is very marginal, I would say. But sentiment, of course, has got affected for new investors.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya?
Well, you know,
as far as the international situation is concerned,
I have a slightly different perspective on this entire issue. Yes, I entirely agree with my co-panelists that investment climate has been affected, and it will be affected if the skirmishes go on and escalate into even a low-intensity warfare. But I think the larger impact will be felt on the government finances. Here is a government which is very keen on increasing public investments.
Right.
And suddenly you will realize that this government will come under tremendous pressure from the defense ministry to increase its budget.
Right.
Now it is already 1.6% of GDP, is around 2.8 lakh crore is spent on defense for this year. And I'm reasonably certain that the demand from the defense ministry will increase substantially for next year, not only for the skirmishes in Pakistan.
And there will be a lot of public support to it.
Public support with it also. So therefore, for a government that is trying to, rein in its fisc, it will be, and at the same time trying to increase public investments, which it has done this year. 50,000 crore extra money has been spent in the first 5 months of this year compared to the last year. So government will be a bit of in a tight situation. That is, in my view, the first big impact which the government will have to face on the finances side. And the second, which is a is a tertiary impact, I think, India's, we don't normally talk about India's Bollywood. And I think if you have the skirmishes going on, Bollywood would lose an indirect market in Pakistan, because we may not actually gain a direct benefit from it, but through Dubai and other centers, the Bollywood industry is getting a lot of, it is a market, and India's soft power also gets extended to that extent. So I personally feel that on the whole, yes, immediately the impact is minimal, but on the government finances, the impact will not be insubstantial.
Yeah, Mr.
I just add to that bit. I think continued skirmishes, continued tension, and what's been called a low-intensity warfare can also impact the inflationary environment of the country. We've seen that in the past. Whenever there has been any
GST coming in will only add to it.
It only add to it. So I think while direct impact may not be immediate, higher government expenditure on defense-related matters, add to the fiscal deficit, could lead to a higher inflation in the country. But that is if it lasts for very much longer than what we have seen. Alongside that, I would think that the trade which takes place, you know, a lot of there are three types of trade which we have with Pakistan. One is direct, $2.5 billion, our exports, 0.5 billion imports from them. Then there is trade through Dubai, which is as much, $2.5 billion, entry port trade, call it. I think that would get impacted as well. Adds to, becomes about 5. Then there is barter trade taking place at the border.
At the border.
And it is probably not accounted for. The barter certainly does not, but there are benign environment of people crossing over, exchanging, buying goods and others. Those could impact the economies of the border states. And I don't think we should undermine that, particularly this movement of people, which is, you know, kind of allowed to take place even by the border policies on both sides, etc. That will get impacted. And I'm only hoping that this kind of a thing does not last for too long, for all these things to become, acquire some significant magnitude.
Okay, Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Rajiv, you know, as far as the government finances is concerned, I don't know whether you heard what Mr. Bhattacharya said about how it's going to impact the government finances.
Yes.
Well, you know, we will see that in the budget when it comes, the pressure on the government to increase the defense expenditure, and also the fact that FDIs, you know, right now the people are saying that it has not got affected, but how do you think it will get affected as far as the FDIs is concerned?
Well, FDI will, of course, if this tension persists, then of course the investor sentiment will be down and FDI will get affected because people will not take a bet on the Indian economy or the South Asian economy in view of heightened tensions between the two countries. But you know, on the fisc, the issue is that if, and that's a big if the increased expenditure by the Defense Ministry is spent on procuring supplies produced within the country, then that of course is an added fillip to the economy, because that just is an extra demand for domestically produced products. Maybe they are armaments or whatever, but the problem there is that 70% or so of our defense equipment is imported, which is creating jobs and demand outside the country. So that's not such a good idea. But Girish, my real concern also is with our regional cooperation and regional trade. As you've seen that this tension has led to the postponement or the cancellation of the SAARC summit.
Right.
And heightened tensions between India and Pakistan means that all the regional issues, whether that's of a regional grid or tackling environment or water issues or trafficking, all of that get affected. And I think that's a major cause of concern. And then our trade also with Central Asia. You know, there had been hopes that at some stage Afghanistan and Uzbekistan will compel Pakistan to open its territories for import with India, for trade with India. I mean, that of course is now going to be a non-starter. So and I know for a fact that there is an ongoing World Bank project for electricity trade and exports of Indian electricity to Pakistan. That will also go down. And so I think overall, while the impact on the large Indian economy is going to be not substantial, there are, as one of the panelists said, opportunities being lost here, which hopefully will not go on for very long.
Okay, Mr. Vasudev. Mr. Vasudev, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we're not talking of just economy of India. As Ajay Dua was pointing out, Pakistan also needs to think about the kind of impact it will have on its economy. He was talking about it being majorly an agricultural economy. Another important factor is the CPEC, that China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. The role China can play in bringing down tensions, because they have a huge stake in this matter. How is that going to be played out?
Well, first let me just make one point, supplement on the fiscal impact. I think the pressure from the Defense Ministry for higher allocations is going to be more on the capital expenditure side. And that capital expenditure, past experience tells us, is a very long drawn-out process. It's not as if they ask for something today and the money is spent tomorrow. It takes years. So that is not going to be such an immediate impact. On the revenue expenditure side, I do not see, after all the pay commission things have been settled and the OROP has been settled, how much extra revenue expenditure the Defense Ministry will be asking for. Maybe a little bit more, but that won't add up to much. But the other point, I think, which was just now made, that if there is some increased expenditure which improves the capacity utilization in our ordnance factories and domestic, I think that is going to be a help to the economy. It is also going to be, I think, a good opportunity for more foreign investment on the defense side. I think this may be a good opportunity for government to move a little faster in that area, and the political type of cobwebs around defense FDI may be a little less at this point of time. So that may be a positive in that sense. Now, the other point that you asked about the impact on the Pakistan economy, I feel over the years Pakistan has tried to integrate its economy more and more with the Central Asian countries. And therefore, it is whatever economic benefits through regional integration it is getting is in that area. That may not get affected so directly. But the potential in terms of more Pakistan trade with SAARC countries and all will be a setback for them. Secondly, their fiscal position is not that strong, is not that robust. So there will be more crowding out, I think, effect for public investment in Pakistan as compared to in India. So they will probably be affected on that account as well. The other point about that corridor with China that you're saying, that of course is there independent of what is happening now. Only thing is the Balochistan issues and the Afghanistan issues are coming in the way, but one can expect that if Pakistan gets into some difficulties, China will certainly try to flex its muscles in different areas to create some difficulties for India. And that, I think, will be a major challenge for our diplomatic community, try to see how that is countered and it does not affect us too adversely. But one can certainly see something of that type happening.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya?
Yeah.
One, if you'd like to respond to what he says. Second thing is about this, creating the internal demand. How does this kind of a situation affect the internal demand?
I mean, on theory and of course, it will create, any war does trigger and create domestic demand. But I do not know whether it is a desirable instrument for creating demand. But having said that, somebody made this comment on its impact on SAARC.
Yes.
And I think that we are underestimating what these skirmishes would actually mean for the future for SAARC. Just about a year ago, we were talking about a SAARC currency.
Right.
We are talking about, the MFN has collapsed with Pakistan, and I don't think it is moving to any firmer territory on any other countries. So probably, I would say that if these skirmishes continue and the relationship remains cold with Pakistan, I would imagine India per se, the largest country in the SAARC region, will have to look for and will be willingly forced to look for other trade arrangements. And probably that's a positive, because it should go in for RCEP a little more aggressively. It should try to come closer to the ASEAN and gain the benefits for the economy. So if SAARC doesn't happen, I don't think we should shed tears over it. And on the contrary, we should actually exploit this as an opportunity to move into a larger kind of a trading arrangement to exploit India's economic potential.
Yes, Mr.
I think more than the China-Pakistan corridor, which I think may not get impacted adversely, because the Chinese
my point was that, because of this China-Pakistan economic corridor, CPEC, maybe the tensions may have to be, the pressure on Pakistan to reduce the tensions may be there, because, that passes through POK.
Well, some work has already started in the POK, Gilgit, Baltistan that portion, some 60 odd kilometers. I think the work the Chinese are doing with considerable speed. That apart, it is in Chinese interest much more than Pakistan to have that corridor in position and get an access to the Arabian Sea port of near Gwadar, or the Gwadar port. I think of immediate concern to us is the Tapi pipeline. After considerable many years, we've seen progress on it. Bilateral, trilateral signing has taken place. I think that will get impacted the moment, and because Pakistan has been lukewarm about it all this while, they have now fallen in line because we have conceded a few things. They've been able to get some concessions from Afghanistan as well. That would be a cause for concern. Second, I think
how much will that affect the plans as far as India is concerned?
Well, our demand for hydrocarbons, particularly gas, is growing rapidly with a cleaner coal, cheaper pricing. We are seeing considerable amount of substitution of coal by gas and in course of time by petroleum products as well. And Tapi was supposed to help us get the gas from the Middle East, from the Central Asian countries. I think that will be a cause for concern. We will continue then to have the, coming by LNG tankers round the trip, etc. Though there is, as of now, some gas still available in Qatar, etc., which we can get. But this was a source which will dry up. I think another reason I get worried is the volatility in the stock exchange, which we saw immediately.
And it is continuing.
And it's continuing. The moment that happens, the foreign investment which is coming into the stock market, it's coming into the Indian capital market, that's going to get adversely impacted. Like the FDI, which probably takes a little more longer to take a call on. FDI is a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
That will get impacted, and we could see climbing down or reversing of the trend which we've seen in recent months in the stock market and the capital market.
Somebody, I think Mr. Vasudev or Mr. Kumar talked about the potential of the opportunity lost. And I just wanted to highlight two aspects. One is that there was this talk about the power that is produced on our western borders was considered for export to Pakistan, and Pakistan is power deficit.
Yes.
And I think it moved up to a point, and I think it was an opportunity for India to tap. We are right now having a situation where we have got power, but there are no takers.
Yeah.
So I think that's an opportunity lost. Similarly, cement.
Can I just butt in on just on that power
and on sugar and all these areas? In my view, the opportunity lost, it can be substantial
over a period of time.
Over a period of time.
Sorry, sure. We've been trying to export power to Pakistan for a very long time, and for various reasons, it hasn't gone beyond just a minuscule, very small.
There's a small, I think,
very small, 50 megawatts is what we are talking about. So there's demand right now. The current demand may be lower, but I think the political will also to export too much of power to Pakistan. That's not
never been there.
Never been there, and we continue to remain in that mold for a variety of reasons.
Okay, Rajiv, what kind of what kind of pressures can we expect as far as internationally on India and as well as on Pakistan as far as the economy is concerned? Where do we think the pressures will come from, and why?
Well, I think the first pressure on Pakistan will come from China, of all things, because the CEPC can get threatened if the hostilities increase in the northern regions. So that is where, as I think Ajay pointed out, that is where the work has started the most. And also, if there's if God forbid, but if kind of this thing leads into a naval blockade, etc., of Gwadar and so on, or disturbance in Balochistan, I don't think it's in Chinese interest at the moment to up the ante, and they might therefore want to. They will probably ask the Pakistanis to to sort of keep it cool as far as possible. The other pressures, of course, will be from the Western powers, US and NATO allies, etc., but they don't have much leverage with Pakistan at the moment. On our side, I think the pressure that we will get is perhaps from the US, but thankfully at the moment the US and it seems to be on board with our viewpoint because and because of what they also see the Pakistan government as sponsors of terrorism, so there may not be too much pressure on us at this stage. Let me just point out just one thing, which is that the sustained hostilities or a period of tension is far more inimical to Pakistan than to India. And and it's a pity that the Pakistan army has no consideration of the sort of impact these things have on the Pakistani population, because they face a prospect of higher cost of their necessary imports, of much less exports, if at all, to India. And as we just heard, the cessation of any electricity exports, etc. So the fact remains, and we should take this on board, that Pakistan is much less well placed to take the impact of these sustained tensions than India is, because thankfully, given the scale and complexity of our economy and country, if something happens on the western borders, it thankfully doesn't affect a large parts of India, which carry on merrily, as it were, with nothing, as if nothing is happening at all. And that's been India's great strength over a long-term period.
Okay. Mr. Vasudev? Mr. Vasudev, so can we safely...
Slightly different, I think, point.
No, can we safely say that the impact, what the finance minister says about the impact being very marginal, is something which we can hold on to?
Well, impact, I think, in the short run is going to be marginal, but if this thing continues and escalates, and the other international pressure point that you're mentioning, here we are talking about two nuclear armed states, so there is a lot of concern in the rest of the world, Western countries, international organizations, that this sort of thing doesn't go out of hand. So there will be pressures on both sides, maybe a little subtle on India and maybe a little more blunt on Pakistan or whatever, but that to see that this thing is contained, because everybody is concerned, the rest of the world, that these are two nuclear powers, and the hostility between the two should not escalate to that extent. The other point, I think, which Rajiv was mentioning, I think the rest of the country, they are now going to see a much more heightened terrorist threats in different parts of the country. It's not only the border skirmishes here on the western side. Even Mumbai or Calcutta or any other part of the country is very much susceptible to terrorist activity. So there will be concern all over the country in that sense, and the security agencies will have to bolster their sort of anti-terrorist intelligence and other activities. So the whole country does get affected. So if you've got hostilities of this type on the border, I don't think we can say that we are quite okay, we are a big country and nothing is going to happen, Pakistan is small, they'll be more affected. No, I think we will be affected to a large extent if this thing continues. And the other point, I think, which is a very valid point, I think, which I can't see him on because I am not on this in the studio, Mr. Dua mentioned, I think the impact on the institutional investors in the stock market.
Right.
These people are very concerned about political risks and this type of risk. So the very happy current account deficit type situation that we are having today, because a lot of our trade deficit is being made up by institutional investors and FDI and things of that type. So if there is a little more concern and they start taking out money and putting it to safer places and all that, so that could have that impact. And that is why you're seeing this little bit of problem in the stock market, because people are fearing what is going to be the view of the institutional investors. Are they going to stay put, or are they going to take the money out of India?
Okay, I think on that note, we'll end. No tensions between two countries is a happy situation. It's certainly not happy for the economy. As Mr. Vasudev finally pointed out, it can have an impact all over the country. Hopefully these tensions will reduce in the coming days. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with Andrush in the Big Picture same time tomorrow.